Today we are starting a brand new teaching series on Netflix shows. We do teaching series where we stay on a topic for a while. This one is 4 weeks long, and I hope you'll come for all 4 weeks. We're going to talk about Cobra Kai, about The Last Dance, about the show You, and today, The Queen's Gambit. The Queen's Gambit tells the life story of Beth Harmon. Beth grows up in Lexington, Kentucky. Beth's father has never been in her life. When Beth is 9 years old, her mother takes her to her father's house, asking him to help take care of her, but he says no, and Beth watches her father reject her. Her mom drives away, desperate, feeling like she can't take care of Beth, and she attempts to kill them both by driving her car into a truck. Mom dies. Beth miraculously survives. But it's now clear to her, her dad doesn't want her. Her mother chose to die rather than raise her and tried to kill her too. She is alone in this world. She decides that's her lot in life. In fact, later she says, I'm fine being alone. Beth is put into an orphanage. The children there are given tranquilizers to help them behave, and Beth becomes addicted. In fact, later when the state passes a law outlawing giving the kids the tranquilizers, Beth finds ways to steal them and at one point overdoses. One day, Beth has to go into the orphanage basement where she comes across the janitor, Mr. Scheibel, sitting at a chessboard. Well, eventually she convinces him to teach her chess, and it turns out that Beth is a chess prodigy. Her game is helped by her visualization skills, which are enhanced by the tranquilizers. About 6 years later, Beth is adopted, and she goes to school, public school for the first time, where she's bullied by the popular kids because her clothes are so plain. Soon, her adopted dad leaves the family, abandoning his wife and little Beth, and again she feels rejected, unwanted, alone. And Beth Harmon's childhood is filled with pain. Some pain that she inflicted on herself, mostly pain inflicted on her by others. Beth's story, especially all of the family pain, reminds me of a story in the Bible. This messy family in the Bible features two brothers named Jacob and Esau. They were twins, with Esau coming out first, which may seem insignificant, but at the time, the firstborn son was the prized possession of every family. As firstborn, Esau would someday receive double the inheritance of the other children and a blessing from his father as the new leader of the family. The story gets crazy one day, years later, when Esau gets hungry. Esau comes in from a long day, and he finds Jacob, who is cooking lentil stew. And Esau wants some, which, lentil stew, I mean, I would understand if Jacob was cooking Krispy Kreme donuts with a hot now sign over the stove, but lentil stew. Esau asks for a bowl full. Jacob responds, I'll tell you what, I'll give you some stew if you give me your birthright. In other words, you get a bowl of stew, I get half of your share of the inheritance when dad dies. And Esau says, well, you know what? I'm starving, so fine. How hungry do you have to be to give away half of your future inheritance for one meal? And again, we're talking about a bowl of lentil stew. Esau is an idiot. Lots of people in the Bible are idiots, which makes me feel really good because I realize that I would fit right in. And we can all relate to making stupid choices when we inflicted pain on ourselves. You've done some things, right? You've got some regrets. Yeah. I think we all join Esau in the idiot parade. Here's the thing. When I look back at my bad decisions and regrets, it's hard not to live my life resenting myself. My life is not what it could have been, and it's my fault. And I wonder how often Esau struggled with shame over his own stupid decision. And it's not just Esau. I wonder if Jacob struggled with guilt for the way he took advantage of his brother. I know I've got some regrets from pain I've inflicted on other people too. Well, Esau had traded away half the inheritance, but at least he would still receive that blessing from his father. That blessing would secure Esau's place as the leader of the family. He would be respected and he would be honored. But Jacob had other plans. He schemes with his mother, Rebekah, to deceive Isaac into giving Esau's blessing to Jacob. It's another blow to Esau's future. And he now has someone other than himself to blame. He can spend the rest of his life bitter towards Jacob. And again, I think we can relate. I know for me, what keeps me stuck is not only the stupid decisions I've made, but also what others have done to me. I struggled with resenting myself, and I've struggled with resenting others. Like my dad was abusive, called me names, made me feel small. One time he punched me in the face in front of my grandmother, and that made me feel small. He cheated on my mom. He abandoned my family when I was 11. You've got those same kinds of pain from your past, right? Pain other people have inflicted on you, which causes bitterness. Pain you've inflicted on yourself, which causes shame. Pain you've inflicted on others, which causes guilt. And what do you do with the pain from your past? Most people run. I wonder if you're running from your past. Are you running from your past? That's what Beth Harmon does. Beth discovers that her adopted mother took the same tranquilizers she had become addicted to years earlier at the orphanage. And so she starts stealing her mother's pills and becomes addicted again. Beth becomes dependent on the pills, including to help her in chess. She begins playing chess competitively and starts a meteoric rise to the top of the chess world, but it's dependent on her drug use. And soon it's more than drugs. Beth steals a bottle of gin from a party and quickly becomes addicted to alcohol. She also spends lots of her prize money on stylish clothes and begins sleeping around with random guys. Why? Why the drugs, the alcohol, the clothes, the sex? She's trying to numb her pain, to run from her past. And Beth's story is so similar to so many of ours. We experience pain, and not knowing how to deal with it, we run. We run from our past. That's what I did with all the abuse from my dad. And I wonder, how do you run? How do you run? You might wonder, run from my past? What does running look like? Well, part of it is ignoring the pain of our past, ignoring it. And typically, we ignore it with what counselors would call coping mechanisms. Coping mechanisms are what we turn to when we struggle with painful emotions. Coping mechanisms are how we try to numb the pain. We turn to coping mechanisms to try to make us feel better, but at best, it's temporary because they don't deal with the underlying pain from our past. And coping mechanisms can easily become addictions. We think of addictions as the bad things that we do excessively, like with Beth in The Queen's Gambit. It's drinking, it's drugs, it's illicit sex. But we can also use good things as coping mechanisms to self-soothe our pain. And we can become addicted to them, like playing video games, social media, chocolate, chocolate, shopping, reading fantasy or romance novels, working out, or chess. That's what happens with Beth. She uses chess as an escape, as a way to run from the past. She's so obsessed with winning, it destroys relationships. But when she wins, it feels good. Kind of. But she's not really doing better. Chess has just become a coping mechanism. Winning is just another addiction. She's still not dealing with the pain of her past. She's still running. Same thing happens with Esau and Jacob. You fast forward a few years, and you see that instead of dealing with it, they've run from their past. They both moved far away from their childhood homes, far away from each other. Esau lived in the land of Edom. Jacob lived in a place called Paddan Aram. This won't impress you as far as my Bible knowledge, but I thought Paddan Aram was a planet in Star Wars. They need to deal with what's happened, but instead, they run. They run from the past. Are you running from your past? Here's the problem. If you run from your past, you get stuck in it. You're trying to move forward, but there's always something holding you back. That's what Beth was doing. And then one day, Jolene, her friend from back when she lived at the orphanage, shows up at Beth's house and tells her that her old chess mentor, Mr. Scheibel, has passed away. The two of them drive to the town they were orphans in for the funeral. On the way, they stopped to take a look at the orphanage they grew up in but hadn't seen for years. And seeing the orphanage reminds Beth of the pain of her childhood. She tells Jolene, I just realized that I never want to go in there again. But hours later at the funeral, something triggers Beth. She says, I changed my mind. And she decides to go back to the orphanage and to revisit her past. Beth revisits her past and she realizes, and she was abandoned by her dad and by her adopted dad. But she did have a father figure, Mr. Scheibel. And she had Jolene. She was not as alone as she thought she was. She was loved. And something changes inside of Beth. Something heals. She gets unstuck. Her friend Jolene helps her quit drinking and taking drugs, and she finds that she's able to visualize and play chess at the highest level without the help of drugs. She has a group of chess-playing friends who come alongside of her. In fact, she's finally able to beat her chess nemesis, Borjov, the best player in the world. And she becomes world champion. She discovers a powerful truth that we need to learn as well. To get to God's future, you have to go through your past. To get to God's future, you have to go through your past. Same thing happens with Esau and Jacob. So God speaks to Jacob and tells him to move back to his hometown of Canaan. So Jacob rounds up his family and he begins making the journey. And that's when it hits him. To get to Canaan, he'll have to go through Edom. And Edom is where Esau lives. And Esau now has an army, 400 trained soldiers. Suddenly, Jacob isn't sure if his caravan will be able to make it to Canaan alive. When I read this story, my question is, hey, why did God want Jacob to go to Canaan? I wonder if it was because he knew Jacob and Esau could never move into the future until they addressed the past. Despite their apparent success, they must have been tormented by underlying feelings of shame and bitterness and guilt. Jacob could never live the life he was supposed to live without asking Esau for forgiveness. And Esau could never live the life he was supposed to live without offering Jacob forgiveness. Well, Jacob is terrified, and he prays in Genesis 32. "Oh Lord, please rescue me from the hand of my brother Esau. I am afraid that he is coming to attack me along with my wives and children. But you promised me, I will surely treat you kindly, and I will multiply your descendants until they become as numerous as the sands along the seashore, too many to count." Jacob prays the kind of prayers I have prayed so many times. Like, God, I know I have issues from my past, but I don't want to deal with them. I just want you to fix them. Come on, God, wave a magic wand, sprinkle some special dust here. Just make it all better. Jacob wants to get to Canaan. He wants to get to this new place God has for him. He wants to experience the blessings, the promise of God, God's future for his life. But he doesn't want to face his brother. Problem is, life doesn't work that way. We have to go through Edom to get to Canaan. To get to God's future, you have to go through your past. Well, Jacob didn't want to go through Edom, but he had to. He had to if he was ever going to be free from the past, and if Esau was ever going to be free from the past. God knew that, and so God sends Jacob through Edom. When Jacob approaches Esau, he does so with a humility that reveals a truly contrite heart. Then check out what it says. I'll read it to you. Genesis 33. It says, "Then Jacob went on ahead. As he approached his brother, he bowed to the ground 7 times before him. Then Esau ran to meet him and embraced him, threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they both wept." Jacob owned what he had done and bowed to his brother, asking for forgiveness. Esau offered it, and finally, they were able to move past their past and into God's future. And that's true for you as well. To get to God's future, you have to go through your past. You have to go back. Not necessarily physically like Beth did, but you have to go back. Your future depends on you moving past your past. You have to stop running. What does not running look like? We asked that question, right? What does running look like? What does not running look like? Well, I think it begins by asking, what happened to me? What is it that happened? So what happened? I mean, the pain of your past probably includes trauma. Your trauma might be pain you've inflicted on yourself and feel ashamed of, or pain others have inflicted on you, which has led to bitterness, or pain you've inflicted on others and you feel guilty about it. What happened to you? Whatever it is, you can't run from it. I love what Pastor Andy Stanley says. He says, your regrets are only part of your story. They don't have to be the story. Your past should remind you. It doesn't have to define you. Man, that is so true. You can get unstuck, but you'll have to go back to go forward. God has got something better for you. He's got a path of healing for you, but that path goes through your past. It goes through your pain. And that is difficult, but it's the only way it works. To get to God's future, you have to go through your past. In the Queen's Gambit, the message Beth received was that she was alone, that she'd always be alone. But when she revisited her past, she realized she was never alone, never. And she began to move into her future, and you can do that too. And one thing I noticed in the Queen's Gambit, Beth is able to go through her past to find the path of healing because of Jolene, an encouraging, supportive friend, and because of some other friends who become a family to her. That's the way it works. The Bible says we heal in community. Like James chapter 5, verse 16, it says, pray for each other so that you may be healed. Like, can I encourage you to do this? You're going to need someone, maybe a couple someones walking with you, a mentor, a professional Christian counselor, a friend like Jolene. Now, you may feel like you don't have a friend like that, and I get it. And that's why we have Verve groups, because in a Verve group, you get friends like that. And if you're not in one, you need to get in a Verve group. Verve groups are 5 to 15 people, typically meet once a week. You make some good friends, and together you grow towards a good God. You can get in a group by clicking on verve.cc. When you go to verve.cc, click Verve Group, and there'll be like a sign-up page, and you can register. We'll contact you. We'll help you to get in a group. We'll take care of that with you. Go to verve.cc, click on Groups. You can get unstuck. God has got a path forward for you. But to get to God's future, you have to go through your past. Let me pray for you. Let's pray. God, this story, watching the Queen's Gambit, is just like, it just brought up so much in me. Because I know what it's like to feel abandoned and rejected by a dad. I know what it's like to be dependent on things, on substances to try to soothe pain. I think a lot of us know what it's like to hurt or to hurt someone else, to have guilt, to have shame, to find coping mechanisms, to deal with it, to run from the pain. God, my prayer is that we would stop running, that we would allow you and we would get some friends around us who can help us to move through our past so we can move into your future. God, help us to find a path of healing. But to get there, we're going to have to go back. It's going to take some courage. So God, would you give that to us? We pray all this. As we enter into this next song, we sing this song, we listen to these words, we do all this in your name. Amen.